Hi, welcome back to our second pre-recorded lesson. In last week's lesson, we took a look at how we can use technology to help strengthen our education. We looked at why technology has become such an important part of the educational process and how we can use technology in our own classrooms and to help us prepare for our classes. We also finally looked at some of the online educational communities, and we took a look at some of the helpful websites that we could start bringing into our classroom immediately. I hope that everybody has had a chance to do the end of the lesson task. If you have any questions on that, please feel free to let me know via email. This week, we had originally devoted this week's pre-recorded lesson to both blended learning solutions and content management platforms. However, after starting to prepare the lesson in blended learning, I decided to split these up because blended learning is such an important topic on its own, and as I kept working and finding more and more resources, I didn't want to squeeze too much into one lesson. So this lesson we're going to talk about blended learning, and then next week we will talk about content management solutions that can also help your class. So let's get started. Okay, here we are back in our presentation. As I said before, this week we are going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is blended learning. Now, blended learning is a phrase that's used all over the place, especially in reference to online education and with technology. But before we start talking about how to use blended learning, I want to make sure everybody knows what this idea of blended learning really means. Because it's really important that everybody understand what blended learning is. So, blended learning is defined as education that combines face-to-face classroom methods with computer-mediated activities. Now, what does that mean? This can mean a lot of different things. When we talk about combining face-to-face classroom and computer activities, this could be a combination of instruction in the classroom with online activities. This could be using a computer-based lesson plan that you created. This could be a virtual tour that you take with your class online. We're going to talk about more practical examples later on, but the idea is that blended learning is not replacing in-person education, is not replacing the classroom experience. It's taking the classroom experience and combining it or merging it with online resources and technology. Now, according to its proponents, the strategy creates a more integrated approach for both instructors and students. And we're going to see what that means later on, but basically the idea here is that we're trying to create a solution for education that is still retaining the classroom element, but also enables the students and enables even the parents to benefit from the technology-based resources. So here is an example, a little bit of a diagram of what blended learning is and its components. So we have here in the middle, you can see the student-centered blended learning. And how do we create blended learning? Well, first of all, like we said, we have the teacher-led instructions. This is still important, and I think I said it during our live session at the beginning. Technology is not here and hopefully will never be here to replace the classroom and the school experience. I've been asked by a lot of parents over the years, they've said to me, my son could just take online courses and he wouldn't even have to go to school. And as much as it may be interesting to take that approach with education, I always tell parents, I would say to them, I hope you never do that, because I still think that there's so much, even with all the technology resources we have, there is so much benefit for a student being in a school environment, both in the classroom with the teacher, and also from a social perspective. So this teacher-led instruction, the face-to-face interaction, I think is still so important and is such an important part of education. And it's something that I don't know that even with the best technology, I don't know if it's something that we'll ever be able to completely replace. I hope not. Like I said, I really think it's important for students to interact with other human beings and with other teachers. So this teacher-led instruction is element number one. The second component of blended learning are the web-based assessments. And what does that mean? Feedback, reflection, and outcomes. In blended learning, we very often will use the web for resource, for tools, for the blended material. We may ask our students to watch a video. We may ask them to do an online exercise on a specific website. We'll take a look at some examples in a minute. And the assessment at the end of this is very important because obviously, how do we know if this worked? How do we know if the students understood the math concept? How do we know if the students got the history that we wanted them to learn? So we'll talk more about assessments later, but that's the second element. The third element here is computer-mediated instructions. And what does that mean? Well, again, we talked about teacher-led instructions and we talked about assessment, but we also have an activity that is going to happen using technology, using the computer. Whether it's a digital, visual, or e-learning based experience, and we'll talk again more about the differences, these are activities that originate from technology. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have the students in the middle of class go online to do something. It could be something that you've prepared before class. It could be something that you do as an activity with your class together. The idea here is, though, that it's a little bit opposite. You can see that computer-mediated instructions and teacher-led instructions are opposite each other. And the idea is that there's a parallel, that the computer-mediated instruction should be a different scenario than a teacher-led instruction. So, for example, giving your students a handout that you created on the computer may be sufficient for integrating technology into a general lesson, but that would not be considered blended learning because that would still be considered teacher-led instruction. So right now we're talking about activities that originate from the computer. And the fourth circle is printed instructions, traditional study material. And again, the idea behind blended learning is that we're not getting rid of the old way and bringing in a new way. Actually, the opposite. What we're doing is we're taking the traditional approaches to education, the teacher-led instructions, and the printed instructions, and we're enhancing them and we're supporting them with the other things you see here, with the computer-mediated instruction and the web-based assessments. So that's blended learning in a nutshell. It's when we're able to take traditional classroom-based education and combine it with all of the amazing resources that we have available to us online and through technology. So that's the idea. Let's talk about now why we do this. What are the advantages of blended learning? So first, let's look at this from the teacher's perspective, and then afterwards we're going to look at it from the student's perspective. The advantages for teachers, and these are just a few examples. First of all, it gives access to new resources. When we do blended learning projects, we can open up new doors for our students. We can share new resources with them. The most classic example is that if we're teaching history, we can now give our students access to online videos or virtual museum tours. That's true for other subjects as well. So these resources, if we were just relying on a traditional teacher-student classroom approach, these new resources would not be as apparent. Secondly, blended learning introduces teachers to online learning. Now, in our group here, we have people who have experience with online learning. We have people who are new to technology and online learning. And blended learning is one of the best ways, if you are new to this, it's one of the best ways to jump in because it's something that's relatively simple to initiate. There are so many great resources that are already available. Like I said at the beginning, and last week as well, we never want to reinvent the wheel. We never want to have to create something from scratch that exists. And one of the great things about online learning is for almost all of the subjects, Judaic and secular, math to history, and everything in between, there are so many great resources out there, and teachers who maybe have not experienced the wealth of online learning can use blended learning as a way to warm up to the idea and to get used to it. The third thing, opportunity for faculty development, and it lets faculty members experiment with new pedagogies and techniques. What does that mean? You know, a lot of times as teachers, we get into our habits, especially veteran teachers. I know for myself, for example, after 5 years of teaching the same class, it was almost autopilot. It was come in, I knew what I was going to do, and it took a lot to develop new ideas or to try new things. And the nice thing about blended learning is that even if you have taught something 15, 20, 30 times before, this is a chance for you to try something new. It's a chance for you to try something a little bit different. And I always tell teachers that I work with, whom I work, I always tell teachers that, you know what, the best teacher is always also a student. We can always be learning new things. And like we talked last week about the online communities and about the online resources that are available, this is a great way for even veteran, experienced teachers to learn some new techniques and to try some new ideas. The next, helps meet student expectations and build student skills. You know, one of the most difficult aspects of education for me and of teaching for me was always being able to come up with new and creative ways of reinforcing skills and reinforcing the important concepts. And yeah, of course, we have the traditional methods, you know, the tests, the quizzes, the homeworks, the projects, the papers, but these hands-on activities that we can bring in with blended learning really serve as another way of building student skills. And I started with the second point, but I'll go here now. It's meeting student expectations. Like we spoke about last time, students are thinking digitally. And we talked about this in our last session. Students, their minds are on the side of technology. So students today, when you bring technology-based lessons, this is something that they're expecting. This isn't something that they're going to look at and say, wow. This is something that they're going to look at and say, yeah, this works for me. This is something that I can relate to. And that's important because as we know as teachers, relating to our students and getting them to relate to us can sometimes be a very challenging task. The next advantage for teachers is blended learning can allow for more flexible scheduling. You know, one of the nice things about blended learning is that it can be spread out over many periods if it's a long blended learning project, or it can be something that takes 10 or 15 minutes. And when we're trying to schedule our lesson plans, when we're trying to schedule our class roles, we can really use blended learning to either stretch things out or to accomplish a lot in a shorter period of time. And you'll see as you do more blended learning projects, you'll see what I mean with this. You know, I've done blended learning projects with my students that have taken 2 weeks, huge assignments. And I've done other things that have taken 15 minutes, but would have taken me 2 or 3 days of class to accomplish the same material. So there's a good flexibility there. And the last advantage for teachers we'll discuss is that blended learning retains the face-to-face aspect that many faculty members cherish. Again, the nice thing about blended learning is we're not saying to teachers, okay, we're going to make everything happen on the computer now. We don't need teachers anymore. In fact, the opposite with blended learning. The teacher-classroom component, the teacher-student relationship, is so important to the blended learning process. It's a central element. And believe me, that face-to-face aspect is very important. I spend my waking hours as an online teacher, and while I can reach students online, and I've, thank goodness, been able to develop a lot of great student-teacher relationships via online classes, I have to admit that there is something very unique and very special about that face-to-face aspect. And the nice thing about blended learning is it enables us to bring in technology to our classes and to our lessons, but without sacrificing that face-to-face aspect that's so important. So those are some advantages of blended learning from the teacher side. Now, let's take a look at some of the student advantages. How can blended learning help a student succeed? So first of all, like we said before, blended learning meets a student's expectations for utilizing technology. Again, these students are living in the 21st century. These students all have technology at home, they have it at school, they have it in their pockets, they have it everywhere. That's how they communicate, that's how they spend their free time. So they're expecting, and if you bring the technology into the classroom, you're only going to reach them closer. You're going to be able to develop much more of a bond with them and get their interest piqued as well. Blended learning also helps students develop independent learning skills, and this is a big one. You know, there are different styles of learning in education, and I'm not going to go into the different styles right now. That's not what we're discussing. But one of the most challenging aspects I've found, especially at the middle school and high school level, is getting students to think and to develop their own independent skills and their thoughts. You know, students are become very used to hearing a lecture, memorizing facts, and taking the tests. That's the old way of doing things. What blended learning does, one of the things it does, is it enables the students, and not just enables them, but it forces them to really think and to use their own reasoning skills to come to conclusions. And sometimes this is challenging for students, but this is a very important skill that students have to learn in order to be successful later. And these blending learning activities are not just read a paragraph and answer questions or hear a lecture and answer questions. Students actually have to think and use their creativity and use their good ideas. And that's something as teachers that we are always trying to encourage. The next advantage is blended learning for students offers increased flexibility and convenience. The classic example here is that student who is missing a week of school either because he's sick or he's on vacation or whatever it is. Well, if all of their lessons are student classroom-based lessons, there isn't much flexibility there. The student, if he's not in class, he's going to miss the material. But with blended learning, the work, the blended part, the technology part, can really be done when it's convenient for the student. Some students I've given blended learning assignments to, I'll often give class time for at least to start the work. And I've had students say to me, you know what, I'd rather do this at home when I can think, when it's quiet. And at the beginning, I would always tell the students, no, I'm giving you the class time, I want you to use it. But then I started to realize that, hey, you know what? The student is right. Some students just need that quiet place to work. Some students need that independent atmosphere. And blended learning, because it's not directly in the classroom, because it's not that traditional lecture or classroom-based activity, there is that flexibility involved. And especially now, even with students walking around with their smartphones and their iPads, a lot of the blended learning materials can even be accessed from those devices as well. And I can tell you, there's nothing better than and I saw this the other day. I was walking down a street here in Modi'in, the city here in Israel that I live in, and I saw a student sitting on a bench with his iPad. And I kind of leaned over his shoulder. I was curious to see what he was doing. And he was actually completing, he was on a math website completing an online activity. And I'm sure he wasn't doing this because he was having fun. I'm sure he was doing it because his teacher gave him an assignment, and here's something he was able to do whenever he had time. So that flexibility really also makes the students very happy, and they appreciate it too. The last advantage for students that we'll take a look at is that blended learning provides better access to those with job, family, or distance barriers. Again, same kind of thing as we spoke about with flexibility and convenience. Not everybody has the same resources as other people. Some people, especially at the high school level, I know that many of my former students had to leave school to go to their jobs because they had part-time jobs. Other students of mine, I had students in the States when I was teaching in Baltimore, especially, that lived in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and they were on a bus for 2 hours every day. So again, the idea behind these advantages, the flexibility, these students who were in Harrisburg, these students who were commuting 2 hours each way to school, now had a different method, a different way that they could do their work. And again, this is often a very big help. So these are just some of the student advantages and some of the teacher advantages. And now we have a little bit more of an idea as to what blended learning is and why it's become such a popular methodology, and why it really can be a help to not just our students but to our entire academic approach. Okay, now what I'd like to do is, now that we've discussed the theoretical, I'd like to go to the practical side. Now that we know about blended learning, how do we get started with blended learning? How do we make it happen in our own classes? So here's the way I suggest. First of all, we have to select a topic. Blended learning can be applied to just about everything. Math, science, history, English, Judaic studies, Hebrew, whatever it is we're teaching, we can apply it. So the first thing we have to do is pick a topic that we normally teach, something that we're either planning on teaching soon, that maybe we're going to be teaching next semester, but that's something that we're familiar with. We don't want to pick something that we've never done before, because that'll just make our job a little bit tougher. We want to pick a lesson topic that we are very comfortable with and familiar with. The next thing we have to ask ourselves is, how would we normally teach this topic? How have we taught this subject in the past? For example, if you're teaching about the foundation of the State of Israel, how have you taught that topic? How have you taught Yom HaTzmaut, for example, up until this point? And think about it. Think about the way you've approached this before. And it may be, and I'm sure it is, that the way you've approached it up until now has worked just fine for you. This isn't about taking something bad and making it good. This is about taking something that you are probably already doing very well, but just giving it a little bit of a different spin, giving it a different flavor. So once you've thought about that and you've thought about how you would normally teach the topic, then think about how you could make this lesson more of a blended experience. Now, again, when we talk about ways to make something blended, we looked at the diagram before, but what does it mean to make it blended? It means not getting rid of the classroom element, because that's still a very important part of blended learning, but it means incorporating a technology-based activity or a technology component into the lesson. So, for example, if you were teaching about the formation, the foundation of the State of Israel, that technology component may include a virtual tour of Israel. It may include some videos from YouTube that the students have to watch about the War of Independence. It could include something else that you find. There are a lot of different resources. Think about what you could apply, and then you could start to go and look for different resources. So again, and that's when we ask ourselves, what resources could you use to make this happen? And we're going to take a look at some practical resource example in just a couple of minutes. But again, it's all about taking the material and trying to make it come alive with technology. And you may do that through videos, you may do that through online activities, you may do that through virtual tours, you may do that through other means that we'll talk about. And once you've answered these types of questions for yourself, again, we're not at the stage yet where you're actually doing it. You're not building your lesson. You're just thinking about how you could address these issues. And once you've addressed these issues and you've been able to come up with some ideas, then you can actually start to work on finding what you need and how to apply it. And I'll tell you, especially for this last bullet here, the resources that you could use to make this happen, sometimes before you answer that question, before I answer that question for that matter, I'll just start Googling. I'll Google, for example, to use my example, I'll Google War of Independence lesson plans, or I'll go to YouTube and Google 1948 Israel's birthday. And I'll see what comes up. I'll see, okay, is there something here that I can work with? I might go to the Lookstein site that we took a look at in the last pre-recorded lesson. I might say, is there a lesson here I could use? Is there something that I could use to make this happen? And then, once I have some ideas, I could go ahead and I could start trying to put the blended component of my lesson together. Now, what I'd like to do now is to take a look at two practical examples. And what we're going to do, we're going to walk through the process of creating a blended lesson. So the first topic I chose was an introduction to fractions. So here we go. So here's how I would proceed to make this a blended lesson. First, I would introduce the students to the concept of fractions as you have done in the past. What does this mean? It means exactly how you would normally teach the concept of fractions in the classroom. You would write the problems up on the board. You may go through a couple pages in the workbook. You may have the students come up to the board in the front of the room to do some on-the-board exercises. Whatever you would normally do in the classroom, you would continue to do that because, again, that's important to the foundation of this lesson. Next, make sure to give plenty of Blackboard examples so the students get some hands-on experience. One of the main rules and foundations of blended learning lessons is we don't want to turn the students loose without the foundation that they get from the classroom. So use those Blackboard examples, use those workbook examples, make sure that they get some hands-on experience with fractions. Next, we're going to bring in the blended approach. And I'll show you a couple of these websites because all three of these are really fantastic resources. You would use a free online math website such as Math Mastery, Math.com, or Soft Schools and ask the students to do some practice or learning activities. And then finally, when they have completed the assigned exercises, assess the students' understanding with some type of quiz, test, graded worksheet. That's up to you. But again, what have we done here? We started off in the traditional way. We gave them some experience. Then we gave them an online component that will give them a chance, hopefully in a fun way, in a meaningful way, of getting some more hands-on activities, maybe learning some additional skills along the way. And then finally, we're going to still assess their progress. And one thing that is important that I didn't mention, when you give the quiz or the test, make sure you take some examples of what they learned when they were online, so that the online time, the online activities are counted and are important. And this is especially important if you're doing this for the first time, because you don't want the students to feel that the online component is not as meaningful or important. So if you give them an assessment, whether it be a quiz or a test or some kind of other assessment, make sure that you take their online activities into account as well. Okay, let me show you a couple of these websites so you can get the idea of what type of lessons might be appropriate for a blended learning activity. Okay, here we are at math.com. Math.com is one of my favorite online resources for math. It's mostly a free service, so you can feel free to explore, to try things out. So they have a couple of great blended learning type activities here. First of all, you can see there's a link here to a site called IXL, which I mentioned later in our presentation. IXL is an online math learning system. It's not free. However, a lot of the introductory material that they offer is free. You can see here, try 20 free practice problems, and they actually have a lot of free material. Even though a lot of their material you have to pay for, there is a lot of free things. So this might be good for a blended learning activity. You could go to IXL, you could find something that is appropriate for what you're teaching, and you could assign it to the students. And I can see under hot subjects, another category they have. Well, what's the first one here? It's fractions. Let's take a look to see what they offer us under the fractions section. And again, all of these resources are absolutely free. So here we have the different fraction skills, and they split it up into 4 categories: first glance, in-depth, examples, and workout. Let's click on workout for definitions and take a look to see what we get. So here is an online activity. Convert each mixed number to an improper fraction and find its reciprocal. So let's see if I still remember how to do this. 9 times 7 is 63. Plus 1 is 64. So 64 over 7. So the answer, I believe, would be 7 over 64. Let's see if I'm right. And I got it correct. All right, my math teachers will be proud of me. And you can see as I go through, it keeps my score of how many I got correct and how many I got incorrect. And now I can go to the next problem, and so on. This is a great online activity. Again, absolutely free. The students will have fun with it. You can do kind of a class contest. You can see how they do with it. You can split the students up into a couple of teams and see which team gets the most problems correct in a pre-calculated or a pre-given period of time. For example, you could say in the next 5 minutes, let's see who can get the most problems correct. There's a lot you could do with this. So this is just one example. This is just one example. This is again math.com, and I've just shown you one of the resources they have, but there's a lot here that you can use. So I would definitely recommend you check out this website. This is another great website called softschools.com, and there's a lot of activities here, not just for math, although math is one of their strengths. You can see along this left side we have free math games, math worksheets, fraction worksheets, multiplication, algebra, and so on. So for example, let's say I was using this to reinforce my fractions lesson. Let's click on math games and see what kind of options we come up with. So here, let's look addition, multiplication, division. We can see all the different categories. Fraction math games. Let's click on pizza fractions game. Here we go. Drag and drop the pizza slices onto the plates to match the fractions. So let's do level 1 and let's start. So you can see 1/3. So I guess we would go like this, and 2/3 would be like this. Let's see if I got it right. And I'm correct. So again, You get the idea, just some really fun activities that in the classroom setting the students could really enjoy and would help reinforce what you're teaching in the traditional way. And that's, again, the idea of blended learning. So if we go back to our presentation here, what have we done? Again, just to review, we introduced the concept, we gave them experience, and then we gave them a chance to try some of what they've learned. I'm not going to show you Math Mastery, although it's another great site. You can check it out on your own. And then after they got done playing with the pizza game or the fraction game or whatever I had them do, I would give them some type of assessment to make sure that they understood. And again, like I said before, I would take some of the questions based directly from some of the questions that they had online. So that's one example. This is for introduction to fractions. Let me show you one more example. This is the Yom HaAtzmaut example I had mentioned before. So for the Judaic Studies teachers, I'll show you this one. So first of all, I would start by getting the students involved in a conversation about what Israel means to the Jewish people. So I'm taking a little bit of a different approach to introduce blended learning here. I'm going to start off with a discussion, with a conversation. And I would write down some of the student responses. What are some of the reasons why Israel is important? And again, the idea here is you want to get the students talking. You want to get them thinking. You know, they're in Jewish schools. They take all these Judaic studies subjects. They go to Hebrew school, whatever the situation is. Why is Israel so important? What does it really mean to us? And then what you might want to do is to send your students on a virtual tour of Israel. There are a lot of websites that feature virtual tours of Israel in different places here. Two of my favorite ones are the Chabad website, which I showed you in last week's pre-recorded lesson, then another one called Go Israel, which I'll show you in a couple of minutes. And then I would give your students questions that they need to answer along their journeys. So I wouldn't just send them to these websites and tell them to go look at pictures of Israel. I would have them looking for specific facts. I would have them looking for specific pictures or ideas. And then at the end, I would ask each student to submit their answers to the questions and ask them to write about if their original answers about Israel's importance has changed. And again, the answer may be yes, maybe no, maybe they may write something else. But the idea here is, what are we doing? We're starting off with a regular classroom discussion. We're sending them online to take advantage of some of the great resources we have available. We're asking our students to think and really open up their minds and to start to think about what they're seeing and why it's important. And we're giving the students the opportunity to digest and to reflect on what they learned. So I want to show you these two websites, the Chabad Virtual Tour and the Go Israel Virtual Tour, just so you can see the examples I'm talking about. Okay, here is the Chabad Virtual Israel Tour. Again, like I've said before, I said it last week, I'm sure I'll say it again. The Chabad.org website is just a phenomenal resource for Judaic studies and Hebrew teachers. There's so much information here. And one of the great things they have is a virtual tour of Israel. You can click on the different locations. You can look at different videos. Again, anything you give your students, you always want to check first to make sure it's what you want. But basically, the idea would be that you could have your students visit several of these places. Let's click on the Kotel, just as our example. And as they're taking their virtual tour of Israel, they could answer certain questions or look for certain information. And you can see they divide it up into history, spiritual, facts, go visit, and they have a lot of great pictures and a lot of great media here. So this is the Chabad Virtual Israel site. And now I'll also show you the Go Israel site. They take a little bit of a different approach, but also they do an excellent job with it as well. Okay, so here we are with the Go Israel site, and you can see we have a map of Israel here that the students can navigate. They can also choose an itinerary, which is interesting, religion and culture, general interest, and basically they can go through and actually role play as a tourist here in Israel. So this is, and again, they feature a lot of great media, a lot of pictures, a lot of videos. So again, with some questions, with some guided activities, students can use these sites either in class or for homework or outside of class to visit Israel virtually and then to develop their own opinions and their own beliefs. So both of these sites are great resources. Okay, and now that we've taken a look at some examples, again, we can start to see the idea of the concept of blended learning. I'm sorry I haven't shown examples for every subject, but what I tried to do here is show secular studies with the fractions and a Judaic studies lesson with the Yom Ha'atzmaut activity. So you can start to get an idea of how you would apply and how you could incorporate some of these ideas. And again, what's great about these things is that they are not so difficult to do. Sometimes it just takes some time to go and to do a little bit of research online, but there's so much information out there, as you can see. You just have to take some time to find it usually. So now that we have an understanding, we've taken a look at some examples. The next thing I want to do is show you some, we're not going to take a look at all of these together, but show you some other tools, some of which you may be familiar with, some of which you may not have heard of. These are all tools that you could use in a blended learning lesson. Khan Academy, for those of you who have seen Khan Academy, you know it's a project that was sponsored by Microsoft. It's a series of online instructional lessons for most of the secular studies subjects. They have a lot of math and science. Those are their two strong points, but they also do English, history content as well. Khan Academy is something that you could use as a resource for a blended learning lesson. You may introduce a concept in math or science, then you may ask the students to watch a Khan Academy video that you've, again, pre-screened, and then you may send them to a third site to do some kind of online activity. Again, everything on Khan Academy is absolutely free. The second one, I'm sure you've all been to YouTube, but I put it on here anyway because it's such an important resource. YouTube is just full of amazing educational material. Sometimes you have to dig for it a little bit because there's a lot of non-educational material as well. But if you do your searching in YouTube and you're searching for something in history, something in even math and science, something even in Judaic studies, there's a lot of content there that's been uploaded. So again, with Khan Academy and with YouTube, always screen the material first. Don't just go on and say, okay, I found a video on Yom Ha'atzmaut, I'm going to show it to my students, because you may be surprised. It may not really be what the description says. It may not be the content you want to share with your students. So always take the time to pre-screen. But with that said, there's a lot here that you can use with your students. Evernote, I'll show you in a second. Evernote is a great free tool. It's something that students can use to create notes, to both take notes and to share notes. It works. What's nice about Evernote is it works with the iPad platform as well. So students can work on the PCs in school or on the iPads in school and then continue the work at home on whichever medium they choose. Let's take a look at Evernote. I'll show you the basic idea very quickly. Okay, here's Evernote, and just to show you their platform, capture anything. Save your ideas, things you like, things you hear. It's not just taking notes, I should point out. Students can use Evernote to grab YouTube videos, to grab websites they like, to grab pictures they find online. You can actually, it's a place to bring anything. It's kind of like a whiteboard, if you will. You can put anything on it. You can access it anywhere. It works with nearly every computer, phone, and mobile device. And you can find things fast. It has a great search mechanism. So how could you use EndNote with a blended learning activity? You could ask the students to collect materials about a certain subject. You could ask them to collect images about a certain historical topic or about a certain topic in literature that you're learning. Then you could ask them, you can even combine that with a writing assignment, with a practical hands-on activity. You can see some of the different tools they have down here, and you can experiment with this again. You'll see Get Evernote. It's free. It's a great tool. A lot of students like Evernote because of its accessibility. What's nice about it, again, is if you give an assignment and you let the students start working in school, they can then go home and finish the rest for homework. So this is one resource that can really be great for blended learning activities. The next resource we'll take a look at is VoiceThread. VoiceThread has been around for a long time. VoiceThread enables teachers to create online voice-based conversations and discussions. So for example, you could use VoiceThread to introduce a concept, to ask a question of the class. And as an assignment, as a blended learning activity, you could ask every student to go on and to talk about how they would answer that question or to give their opinion on an issue. I just got finished working with VoiceThread with a project with a group of American students here in Israel. We were talking about the upcoming Israeli elections, and the teacher used VoiceThread to ask a very simple question. Who would you vote for? Which party would you give your vote for on election day here in Israel? And each student had to go online and submit a voice thread as to which party he would vote for and why he thought that that would be the best party to give his vote. And at the end, the teacher had, there were about 8 people in this class, so the teacher had his question. He had the 8 original voice threads that the students submitted, and then for homework the next night, the students had to listen to the other recordings and then offer either support or rebuttal of somebody else's opinion. So basically what he was able to create was an online discussion where the students didn't have to type, they didn't have to really create anything, they just had to say what was on their minds. At the end, this teacher actually did take this and extend it to a writing assignment, but you certainly don't have to do that. And the students really liked working in VoiceThread. I'll show you their page very quickly. Okay, so here we are at VoiceThread's website. It's called Conversation in the Cloud. And let's take a look at what they do. I'm going to click on K-12 Individual just so you can get an idea. First of all, VoiceThread does cost money, but usually what will happen is a teacher will purchase it, use it once. You can see it's $15 a month, so it's something that most schools will help you with. And you can see here, a single educator license allows you to give your students their own accounts with a secure collaborative network and includes 50 student accounts, create student usernames, automatically be made editor of student work, manage tool to create classes and student accounts, and also create custom web addresses to easily share public voice threads. And all this is $15 a month. So I think it's worth it. And again, the idea here is that you can actually generate conversations and you can generate discussions through your class. Here we are back on VoiceThread's homepage, and there's a great video here that you can click on. I'm not going to play it for you now, but if you click on it, it'll tell you a little bit more about the product and actually give you some ideas about how you can actually use VoiceThread with your students and with your activities. One nice thing you can even do now, and this is a new feature of VoiceThread, while it obviously is mostly an audio platform, you can upload images, PowerPoint presentations, and other media and start a discussion off one of those things. So again, this is a way for students to collaborate outside of the classroom and to share their opinions and their information together. So that's VoiceThread. If we go back to our list here, Schoology is a platform that teachers can use to share materials to create an online community. I'm actually going to spend a lot of time with Schoology in next week's web pre-recorded lesson because it is a great tool. But the last one I want to take a look at right now is called Today's Meet. It's a fantastic tool that teachers can actually use to do text conversations with their students. And again, very easy to integrate into a blended learning lesson. Let's take a look at Today's Meet. What Today's Meet does, and you can tell from their website, Today's Meet helps you embrace the back channel and connect with your audience in real time. What does that mean? Basically, you can create an online meeting space, an online room. You can tell how long you want the room to be available. And once you create the room, you can actually have conversations with your students either during class or even after class. And you can let your students be able to share activities, be able to share their opinions and their skills. You can invite as many people to your room as you want. You can have 1 person or 15 people. And the idea is that students can present their feedback, they can see a presentation, they can do everything even though they're not in the classroom. They still have the chance to be involved in the lesson. And what's nice about Today's Meet is it's very secure. You can see, because we can set the room to delete in even 2 hours from the time you create it, we don't have to worry about things being recorded. We don't have to worry about things being available later on. This is a great platform for here and now that teachers and students can use to actually have real-time technology-based conversations. And in a blended learning lesson, you may use something like this after the students go online to do their activity, whether it be to watch the video or to go on the virtual tour, or to do the online games, whatever. You may ask the students to come into today's Meet chat room and actually answer a question that you have waiting for them based on what they just watched. And then they can watch that, they can read the question and actually submit it in real time. And you can let them know right there from your desk whether they got the question correct or incorrect, whether they answered it fully enough, whatever it is, and you can actually develop a conversation. And what's nice about this is if you have a large class, 15, 20 students, even larger, you can have as many people as you need in today's Meet. And you can be sitting in one place at your desk addressing each comment and each interaction. So this is another very popular platform. You can learn a little bit more about it. By the way, as I say every week, all of these websites and all of the links that I'm showing you today are available in the PowerPoint presentation, which is up on our screen, which can be accessed from our class, on our website. So if you like the links, don't worry about writing them down now. You can just go on to our class website, download the PowerPoint, and just click directly from there, and you'll get right here. So these are some blended learning tools, but again, this certainly isn't a full list. It would be impossible to list everything. The idea behind blended learning, again, is taking the traditional component and merging it with some type of technology-based activity. So to conclude, let's just take one more look at our blended learning chart. Let's just make sure we reviewed everything today. So we talked about teacher-led instructions, the importance of face-to-face interaction. We talked about the computer-mediated instructions, bringing in that visual e-learning component. And then we talked about, again, balancing that with the printed instructions that would go with the teacher classroom activity, as well as the web-based assessments that would go with the computer activity. And we took a look at some practical examples of each category. So this, I think we covered all of our bases, and hopefully now you have a little bit of a better idea as to what blended learning is all about. Okay, so now that we've covered all the bases, let's take a look to see what I want you to do for this week. Last week, I asked you to take a non-technology lesson plan and to incorporate a technology element within that lesson. Hopefully you've gotten that to me. If you haven't submitted that yet, please do as soon as you can. What I want you to do now is I want you to take this idea a step further. I want you to follow the blended learning processes described in slide 6. Let's just go back and look at slide 6 one more time. So again, this is the process, selecting a topic. How would you normally teach the topic? What could you do to make this lesson more of a blended experience, and what resources could you use? So I want you to take these steps, and I want you to try to develop your own blended learning idea. Then I want you to select at least one of the tools we just reviewed on the slide before. Again, these are just suggested tools. You don't have to use one of these. If you find something else online, if you want to use math.com or one of the other sites we looked at, you can feel free. But certainly these tools are available to you, and I'd like you to try to at least take a look at one of them. And I would like you to give me 2 or 3 examples on how you may be able to use the selected tool for a blended learning activity. Again, you don't have to get too involved. You don't have to give me a whole lesson plan. But let's say you take YouTube as the tool of your choice. Give me a couple of examples as to how you would use YouTube videos and the process you would follow, again, according to slide 6. Again, just to review, if you were using YouTube as your tool, how would you use YouTube to strengthen your already existing concept? So that's what I want you to do for this week. Again, I don't want it to take you too long. Again, my rule of thumb is if you spend more than 25, 30 minutes on any task that I give you, just let me know. You can stop. You'll either finish it the next week or just give me what you have. I know everybody's very busy. I don't want to add more work to your plate, but it is important that you take some time to get some hands-on experience here. So please email me your materials by next week. In general, I'm going to post the next lesson on Sundays, so if you could get me your materials here by next Sunday. Sunday next week is the 27th of January. If you could get me that material, that would be great, and we'll be able to move forward. Hi. In this lesson, we took a look at the concept of blended learning. We discussed what blended learning is and how it can be used with your students and in your classroom. And we also took a look at some of the most useful blended learning tools that are out there. I gave you a task to work on for this week to try to incorporate some blended learning ideas with your students and in your classroom. And next week, we will continue with the follow-up to the second part of this lesson, which is content management platforms. Hope everybody has a great week. If you need anything, please contact me via phone or email, and I will see you back next week. Take care.